Welcome to Theater Talk. I'm Ann McBride. Co-host Ed Shopes and I are here the first and third Fridays of the month to tell you all about what's happening in the Mid-Willamette Valley theater world. Hi, Ed.
Hi, Ann, and welcome, theater lovers. Here on Theater Talk, we interview interesting guests from great shows happening at theaters throughout the Mid-Valley. And who are we talking with today, Ann?
Well, on this episode of KMUZ Theatre Talk, we'll talk with Jessica Peterson, Executive Director of Enlightened Theatrics, and Melody Irfani, the Director of Dear Elizabeth by Sarah Ruhl, opening March 10th at the historic Grand Theater. Also joining in are two actors in the play, Ronan Baker and Diane Slamp.
Later on, we'll talk with some friends from Western Oregon University. Michael Phillips, the director of the Laramie Project, opening March 2nd at Western's Rice Auditorium, along with actors Miriam Anderson Taha and Maddie Blanchard. But first, let's check the KMUZ Theater Talk calendar and see what else is on the boards. Ann?
Okay, at Albany Civic Theater, and that's albanycivic.org. They are doing Silent Sky by Lauren Gunderson. The dates for the show recently changed, and it will now run Thursday, February 16th through Friday, February 24th. Silent Sky is the true story of Henrietta Leavitt, a 19th century astronomer, which explores a woman's place in society at a time of great scientific discoveries. Check out our KMUZ Theater Talk podcast on your favorite app for an interview with the directors and actors from Silent Sky.
Brush Creek Playhouse, running February 24th through March 12th, is Brush Creek's 2023 children and youth production, The Further Misadventures of the Seven Dwarfs by Emily and Michael Wood. This romp through the tales of the Brothers Grimm is performed by young actors age 18 and under, and it's directed by Linda Zellner. For tickets and info, go to Facebook at Brush Creek Playhouse.
Elsinore Theater at elsinoretheater.com. Northwest Broadway Productions and the Salem Orchestra will present Stephen Sondheim's A Little Night Music in concert at the Elsinore Theater on April 29th. Tickets will be available starting in early March at elsinoretheater.com.
Enlightened Theatrics at enlightenedtheatric.org. Sarah Ruhl's Dear Elizabeth will be on stage March 10th through 12th and 17th through 19th at Enlightened Theatrics. For info, go to enlightenedtheatrics.org. And stay with us today for our interview with Jessica Peterson, the Executive Director of Enlightened, Melody Irfani, the Director of Dear Elizabeth, and two actors in the play, Ronan Baker and Diane Slamp.
Gallery Theater. Gallery's 2023 season opener is one of Stephen Sondheim's best musicals, Into the Woods. It runs February 17th through March 12th and is directed by Seth Rennie, and you can get tickets at gallerytheater.org.
Kaiser Homegrown Theater. Well, the first show of Kaiser Homegrown's 2023 regular season is The Odd Couple, playing March 10th through 26th. And we'll have more information about that production in our next edition of Theater Talk. Auditions for A Doll's House Part 2 at Kaiser Homegrown Theater are March 13th and 14th at 7 to 9 p.m. And the performance dates are May 5th through 21st. More information at Kaiser Homegrown Theater on Facebook and kaiserhomegrowntheater.org.
Pinnacle Theater at pinnacletheater.org. Shrek the Musical is coming to the Pinnacle March 3rd through the 24th. It's going to be great family fun. And we'll have an interview on our March 3rd Theater Talk program with director Robert Sahlberg. Meanwhile, you can get tickets at the Pinnacle website. And Joe Dodge's acting workshop for actors 18 and older is at Pinnacle Theater's rehearsal studio in downtown Salem. For more info and to sign up, go to tickets.pinnacletheater.org.
The Salem Playhouse has an acting school that offers classes for both kids and adults, and that's held at Kaiser Homegrown Theater. To sign up, go to thesalemplayhouse.com and click the Classes tab.
Spotlight Community Theater at spotlightct.com. Their first show of their 2023 season is Pygmalion, opening May 11th.
On the college front, Corbin University at corbin.edu/theater-arts. The Phantom Toll Booth plays March 16th through 25th at Corbin. We'll interview director Jeremiah Price on our March 3rd Theater Talk program and learn more about it.
Western Oregon University at wou.edu/theater. Coming up March 2nd through 10th at Western is the Laramie Project by Moises Kaufman and members of the Tectonic Theater Project, directed by Michael Phillips. It is part of a 2-week event marking Matthew Shepard's murder 25 years ago. We'll talk about the Laramie Project with director Michael Phillips and actors Miriam Anderson Taha and Maddie Blanchard later on in our program. The final show of Western's academic year is The Wolves by Sarah Delap. It plays May 31st through June 3rd.
Willamette University at WUtheater.com. The Secretaries by the Five Lesbian Brothers is on stage now through February 26th at Willamette's M. Lee Pelton Theater. This wacky horror comedy is set in Big Bone, Oregon. And director Stephanie Mulligan and theater manager Stephen Alexander join us later in the program to talk about this crazy funny onstage romp.
North Salem High School, and that is on Facebook at NSHS Theater. They are doing Freaky Friday, the musical. That will be on stage at North March 2nd through 11th. And the final show of North Salem's season is The Mystery Clue, running May 11th through 20th.
South Salem High School is on Facebook at Sex and Drama. Student-directed one-act plays are coming up the first week in March at South's new Black Box Theater. 9 students will direct plays from A Simpler Time, and that's a collection of 10-minute plays by 9 playwrights who find the funny and the familiar on a trip through the fourth dimension. For info, follow at Sex and Drama on Facebook. That wraps up this week's Theater Talk calendar. Stay with us for today's first guest, Jessica Peterson, Executive Director of Enlightened Theatrics, Melody Irfani, the Director of Dear Elizabeth by Sarah Ruhl, which opens March 10th at the historic Grand Theater, and 2 actors in the play, Ronan Baker and Diane Slam. We'll be right back.
Our guests today are Jessica Peterson, Executive Director of Enlightened Theatrics, and Melody Irfani, the Director of Dear Elizabeth, opening March 10th at the Grand Theater. And we also have the 2 actors in the play, Ronan Baker and Diane Slamp. Welcome to Theater Talk.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, excited to be here.
This is a very interesting play, guys. It's written by Sarah Ruhl, one of my absolute favorite playwrights. I can't emphasize that enough. And she has taken a book that she read that had Robert Lowell's and Elizabeth Bishop's letters to one another. They were both very famous poets in the mid-20th century, and they wrote 800 pages of letters between the 2 of them. This play is a compilation of those letters. Melody, what attracted you to this show, and what do you think is the most important thing audience members need to look for when attending this show?
What attracted me to the play was the words. So here are these 2 poets writing almost 30 years of letters back and forth to each other. And though they're filling each other in on their daily lives and, thoughts about art and life, just the richness of what's there and the beauty of what's there. And Sarah Ruhl has captured it and condensed and told, its own story of their friendship. And, you get to know about these 2 people, but then you also get to experience, different parts of their lives. And it's very touching. I think audiences will definitely relate to it and, hear the beauty of the words and get a glimpse of this friendship.
Yeah, that's interesting because people don't write letters anymore. We all use email, and nobody sits down with pen and paper, and they don't even teach handwriting in cursive in school anymore. Putting a show like this on the season really gives kind of a different lens to what theater is, and especially a lens to the 20th century, don't you think, Jessica?
Absolutely, Ed. You took the words right out of my mouth. When we read the show at the end of last year, I was brought to the moments when I had exchanged some very powerful letters over my time back in high school. I had a friend who was in the military. I remember the days when I waited for my friends to write me. I remember those moments. And I was talking to our education and season selection committee about what an opportunity we have to sort of reintroduce the love and the joy and some of the heartache that came with exchanging letters, waiting, longing for that. And so I'm super excited to introduce this show and open our season with this show. And one of the things that we are implementing, which I would love for everyone who's listening to interact with us, is we're trying to gather letters from all years. So we want to basically curate our lobby area of some sort of letter writing scenario. So we'll have different letters hanging in the lobby. We'll have an opportunity for people who come watch to interact with us by answering, what was a letter that changed your life? Who's your favorite author or poet? And this show is going to be a very intimate 78 seats. So we're actually doing the show from the stage in a 3/4 thrust. So from what Melody was saying about interacting with the story between the two actors, you'll really get that experience because you'll be on the stage to witness it.
Wow, that's going to be exciting for everyone who sees it. Will they actually be able to write letters too?
I have done a call to action for everyone to mail us a letter because we want to display different letters in the lobby, but we will have like a interactive portion in the lobby for people to write little sticky notes of who is your favorite author or poet, what was a letter that changed your life, so people can experience that feeling of being back to what it meant to write a letter. So we'll be doing that in the lobby.
And just let me know about the authors. Do you recite some of their poetry? Is that part of the letter?
So how Sarah Ruhl compiled it, so it's all the words are from Elizabeth Bishop and Robert Lowell's letters. And she basically took snippets of them, rearranged and made this arc. And she also included their poems as well. Not all of them, but snippets, and because they would share each other's work back and forth, get edits and opinions. And so you kind of get to glimpse that within the play.
I read part of this work, and I was really impressed by how Ruhl captured their long relationship and the care and real love and friendship that they shared with one another. I want to ask Ronan and Diane about the relationship of Robert Lowell and Elizabeth Bishop. Let's start with Ronan. How did their relationship start, or what have you learned about Robert Lowell that really impresses you?
Well, I feel like it really started from a place of initially kind of like fandom. Robert Lowell excelled early in his career, and then Elizabeth took notice to that and then reached out to him. And then he responded to her and really loved everything that she was doing. And then general, honest to God fondness for each other's personalities, although somewhat opposite at times, him being a lot more gregarious and her a lot more reserved. But he loved, I would call it like mining those awesome things out of her, her being the more private person. Then affection just grew relatively quickly within a year, months even, this affection for one another, which ultimately didn't come to fruition in a romantic setting. And then it transitioned into her falling in love with someone else, him finding someone else, kind of, ships sailing past one another.
He kind of regretted not asking her to marry him at one point.
100%. And that's actually a linchpin point in the work that we're presenting. It comes up at multiple times throughout the piece.
Diane, let's talk about Elizabeth Bishop and what you're learning through her letters that's bringing her alive to you as an actor.
Well, just learning about her life, the different things that transpired in her childhood, during her adulthood, and how that affected her work and why she was reserved. Most of her poetry, that at least that I have seen, has been more observational. She didn't really write about herself because she was so private, but she would observe the world. And then for me reading that, you can really kind of draw parallels to your own life. But you do see an arc of the things that happened in her life and how it affected her work. One other thing about reading this, and not just the poetry, but of course the letters too, they were skilled writers. They were skilled letter writers. And what Elizabeth didn't necessarily put in her poems, she put in her letters, and she was really funny. There are a lot of funny lines in there, very, kind of a dry wit. It's interesting to see how she maneuvers through her life and her art based on what she experiences and what she decides to share. And that's an important part of the show as well, when she decides to share.
Are you talking about certain parts of her personal life?
Yes. Elizabeth was not a confessional style of writer. She did not put her personal life on the page. But there is a moment where she does open up about some tragedy in her life, which up to that point, she didn't really share in that way through her art. And it's, I think, a very important part of the play.
Wow. Does she talk about certain episodes in her life?
You get glimpses of her childhood through things she says through the letters, just offhanded kind of comments about what she's lived through. I mean, I feel like I know a lot more because I've done a lot more research, but as a viewer of the play, might not pick up on all the different things that happen, but you see little things that are inferred. And the way Melody is putting this together, you will see it in how we move, the choreography. You will feel what has happened in both the characters' life by the way we're moving about, and it just gives it more of an emotional kind of feel. I think people are just going to be moved by it, and I think they're going to love it.
When you say movement, this is not just two stools and you're sitting there and reading letters.
Absolutely not. I am just so very grateful to be part of this, because it is not only the most gorgeous poetry, the most beautiful letter writing, but it's also movement, emotional movement, showing one's discomforts and tragedies and triumphs and mania. It's quite remarkable.
The script, Sarah Ruhl mentioned it could be done with two stools, sitting there just reading the letters, or when they first performed it at Yale, they had like real water on the stage. She has, in her stage directions, done a lot of imagery, and she says that it's, to put some of these, like, from their letters, from their poems, putting it into the physical space, this imagery. What I was inspired to do was take some of that and put it in the body, using movement to show that imagery, show what's going on between the characters and through time. So another cast member has been added, and so where typically it would be projections listing like time and date or different things happening in the script, this third actor, Bobby, will be speaking those words instead and helping create the environment with some of this movement.
So reading the stage directions?
Not the stage directions. So there's subtitles in the script saying, for instance, New York, 1957. Instead of using projections, it will be spoken. The goal is to help create this world, this abstract world that they're living in. I mean, it's an abstract piece. It's just two, these letters back and forth through time, and it's to visually give you something to also look at as well with the movement.
Jessica, can you tell us when the show runs and how to get tickets?
The show runs March 10th through the 12th and 17th through the 19th. March 17th, that Friday, will be our ASL interpreted night. So we do have tickets available for that. The Friday and Saturdays are at 7:30 p.m. and our Sunday matinees at 2 p.m. And we can get tickets at our website, enlightenedtheatrics.org.
And where will the play take place?
The play will be at Salem's Historic Grand Theater at 191 High Street.
But it's really unusual because everyone will sit on the stage.
It's a very intimate setup. Yes, everyone will be on the stage. Our creative team is doing amazing work. Anyone who's experiencing it, I hope they walk away feeling joy and hope and sadness, but also just feeling inspired of just what it means to be a writer, a poet. I'm really excited about it.
Thank you very much, Jessica Peterson, Executive Director of Enlightened Theatrics, Melody Erfani, the Director of Dear Elizabeth by Sarah Ruhl, and Diane Slamp, who's playing Elizabeth Bishop, and Ronan Baker, who is playing poet Robert Lowell. Thank you for joining us on Theater Talk today. We really appreciate your being here. It's been fun.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you
us.
so much.
And folks, that show runs March 10th through 19th at Enlightened Theatrics in the Historic Grand Theater in downtown Salem. And if you really want an insight into the show, I encourage you to go on Sarah Ruhl's website and read the foreword to the show, and that'll give you a lot of insight and preparation for watching it at Enlightened Theatrics. Up next, we'll talk with director Michael Phillips and actors Miriam Anderson Taha and Maddie Blanchard from the Laramie Project, opening March 2nd at Western Oregon University. Stay with us for more Theater Talk.
We're talking with Western Oregon University's Michael Phillips, director of the Laramie Project, and two of the actors who appear in the production, Marian Anderson Taha and Maddie Blanchard. Welcome to Theater Talk, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you for having us.
So this is part of a whole Matthew Shepard event.
This all began with James Redden, who's a professor in music at Western, who was considering doing an oratorio based on Matthew Shepard's life. It's called Considering Matthew Shepard, and decided to try to get everybody in the creative arts involved. So we have all the departments in the creative arts, art, dance, theater, and music are all contributing to a 2-week project in honor of the 25th anniversary of Matthew Shepard's death.
So there are artworks. Where are they displayed?
Well, they'll be up a little bit later this month. The 22nd of this month, they go up, and they'll be in the Cannon Art Gallery, which is the major art gallery on campus in Campbell Hall. So that will run from the 22nd of February through the 24th of March. And then the performances are from the 2nd of March through the 11th.
And that's in conjunction with the oratorio.
Yeah, the Laramie Project and the oratorio will be in repertory. They're doing 2 performances. We're doing 6.
I think the one thing that's very interesting is that the oratorio takes his life, and that's what it's talking about. And the Laramie Project is a lot of, I think it's called verbatim theater.
Yes. The Tectonic Theater Company, which is the people who wrote the script, traveled to Laramie 6 different times, did over 200 interviews, and all the texts in the show are either from those interviews or from their own personal journals. So yes, verbatim theater, and it's after the fact. They go there after the murder, of course.
Yes.
And while the oratorio is really about everything that leads up to the murder.
Well, let's put this in context. The Laramie Project is a play that's about a young man named Matthew Shepard, who in October of 1998 was kidnapped, beaten, and left to die in Laramie, Wyoming. It was known at the time and through today as one of the most egregious anti-gay hate crimes. And Michael, this is the 25th anniversary of this tragedy.
Correct, yeah.
Tell us how Western is focusing on the Laramie Project's 25th anniversary.
This was the first show I ever directed at Western when I came here 20 years ago. So
Wow.
I did it on the 5th anniversary, and I had no plans to do it again until James Redden and Music came up with this project. But we're doing a number of things around the 25th anniversary. We're not only doing the Oratorio and the Laramie Project, but we're also doing the art gallery that we talked about earlier. And there's 2 commissioned dance pieces that will be performed. And probably the thing that we're most excited about is that Judy Shepard, Matthew's mother, will be on campus and speak to the community on March 6th. Supported by the Oregon Cultural Trust grant that we received, the whole 2 weeks is really dedicated to drawing attention to the fact that this happened 25 years ago, but still we are still going through some of these kinds of things today, not maybe this egregious, but homophobia and those kinds of things are still out there and present. So it still feels relevant even 25 years after the fact.
Now, I would like to speak to Miriam Anderson Taha and Maddie Blanchard. Now, you play several parts, right?
Yeah.
Give us a synopsis of your role, Miriam, if you would.
I play a couple people. I'm one of the Tectonic Theater members, and then I think probably my biggest role is Catherine Connolly, who is one of the professors at the time at the University of Wyoming. But then I also play a couple other roles throughout the show.
And what about you, Maddie?
So like Miriam said, we all play a couple different roles. I really like that just in terms of building an ensemble, we're all kind of telling the story. My main role that I have is the mother, Marge Murray, the mother of the cop who responded to, out at the fence, who initially responded to Matthew. And it's about, she's a Laramie, she was born and raised there. So it's about her experience with that community, and then also her experience being so close to the case. Yeah. So that's my biggest role.
How did you guys feel going into this play, and how has it changed your perspective?
I think going in, we knew that this show, even before the audition process, we knew that this was the show that we were going to do. And so I think a lot of people were really nervous just because of how important the show was. But I feel like I've really enjoyed it, at least. It's weird to be in rehearsals talking about these people and remembering that these are real people.
Yeah.
These are real words that they said about this real person that existed. That's really weird for me, at least.
Yeah. I remember being really moved at the production that I saw. Maddie, do you want to chime in here about how you've changed?
I grew up in Dallas, Oregon, but for the first 2 years of my collegiate career, I actually attended the University of Wyoming.
Wow.
I was in their musical theater program, and I just transferred here in September. And so it was really strange coming into this program and then doing a play about a place that I lived in for 2 years. I have so many connections there. And so that was really strange, and I was nervous, like Marian was saying, about how these are real people, and many of them are still living in Laramie today. They have connections to people in Laramie, and so I was nervous about how this was going to be handled. But I remember after our first read through, I was just so moved by everybody in the cast, and I knew that this play was going to be taken care of really well. And I feel like we're doing a really good job honoring Matthew Shepard, and I'm just really excited about this project.
Michael, Moises Kaufman and the Tectonic Theater Project did an incredible job with interviewing the people of Laramie, Wyoming, and writing a fantastic, true-to-life, obviously, play about what happened there. Is this a unique or an unusual approach to how a play comes to the stage? How would you describe it, Michael?
Moises Kaufman has talked about this numerous times, that they really wanted the town to speak for itself and wanted to hear from the actual people involved. And they didn't feel like they could dramatize that better than the actual words of the people who live there. And they just interviewed a wide range. I mean, we were talking about this the other night in rehearsal about how they interviewed 200 different people, and no telling how many hours worth of interviews they did that they then edited down into a 2-hour show. So there's a lot of editing, which is a form of playwriting, I guess. But yeah, the verbatim nature of this is not entirely unique, but it's not usual either.
Well, one of the things that I really love about this play is, despite the horrific crime and how Matthew Shepard died, the play focuses on understanding how it affected the people living in Laramie, Wyoming at the time, and the compassion that came from locals whose lives were changed by this one event in Laramie.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And there are so many characters in the play who still get it a bit wrong. I mean, they talk about how Matthew chose his lifestyle, and of course we know that's not true anymore, but they were doing the best they could with at the moment. And the compassion, you're right, that comes out of so many of them is just touching and genuine and lovely. So it is a joy to work on this piece. I'm glad to be revisiting it.
It sounds like a really important piece of theater and wonderful for the students that are involved. They can always look back and say that they did this play.
Michael, how have you approached the casting of this play? It obviously is a piece that is really important to LGBTQA students and members of our communities. How did you approach casting the roles in this play?
We really just cast the best ensemble we could. It just so happens that there are a number of gay actors in the show and non-binary actors in the show. And all the people that are represented by this story are participating in the production also. But we just really did try to cast the very best group of students we could. We're 10 actors in the show. They play about 80 characters total. So most of them are anywhere between 5 and 8 characters plus narration. So yeah, we wanted people who were diverse in and talented and able to take on a variety of kinds of roles, because they play everything from young people to older citizens. You know, one of our actors, for example, is playing a student at the University of Wyoming and playing one of the 2 murderers. There's just a wide range they have to cover. And so I was really interested mostly in just putting together the best ensemble I could. And it just so happens that our student body is very diverse and we have a full range of people there.
Now, this is completely off the subject, but I read that the Westboro Baptist Church sometimes pickets productions. Are you expecting them?
Well, you know, Fred Phelps, who was the head of that church, is now passed away, so he's not doing it anymore, but he is a character in the show. And so we still get to hear from him. You know, I don't think they're doing it so much anymore because he's gone and he was really the spearhead of that. But when we performed this 20 years ago, we were preparing for them to be there because they were going all over the country to protest against productions of the show. So they never showed up 20 years ago, and we don't expect them this time, but it's always a consideration.
Are all of the cast members students at the university, or did you pull from the area?
No, they are all students.
That's wonderful.
So what's the biggest challenge that you've had in the show, Miriam, and how did you overcome it?
Honestly, and this has nothing to do really with the show. This is just my first show acting ever. So that's kind of been a mental hurdle for me to jump. Mm-hmm. I've worked in theater for a long time and I've always done everything else, but I've never been on stage before. But I really love this project and I love the characters that I'm playing. So that's made it easier for me, I guess. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that's probably been the hardest thing for me.
What about you, Maddie?
I think just with the nature of the show, because we're playing so many different characters, I think the most challenging part for me and I know like the rest of my cast shares this, is finding ways to distinguish these characters without, playing into any stereotypes or finding like a caricature of a certain age. So I think finding ways to differentiate the characters has been really challenging.
Yeah, I can see that. It's hard when you're playing a several roles to distinguish between them.
Well, especially I feel like the way that we're doing the show too is each character only has like one different costume piece, really.
Mm-hmm.
We have like a base costume, and then for each different character we put on like a jacket or a hat or something, and so it's not a lot of differentiation. So we really have to put in the work to make sure that when we're saying one line, it comes across as a different person than the one line that we said 5 minutes ago.
I understood.
Michael, how's the set for this show? Are you keeping it pretty simple?
Yeah, and it has to work for both the oratorio, which will have 75 people or so on stage or more, and us with our 10 actors. So it is just a series of platforms with some projections behind, so that when the choirs are singing, they look like a choir still up on platforms that are stacked. And so, yeah, it's a pretty simple set.
And it doesn't change if there are 10 people or 100 people.
Right. There's no change in the set. So that we're working on the exact same set for the show and the oratorio.
Wow.
Tell us how the show and the oratorio are working together. What are the run dates of the show and the oratorio, and how can people get tickets?
Sure. The Laramie Project is the first thing that opens. We open on the 2nd of March, Thursday, March 2nd, and through Sunday, where we have a matinee. That's through the 4th. And then we come back on the following Wednesday, the 8th, and we perform through the 10th. And then the oratorio performs on Friday the 3rd and Saturday the 11th. They have 2 shows to our 6. So we go back and forth during those 2 weeks. Tickets, if you just go to wou.edu/theater, and it'll take you to the site that has ticketing on it. I think that the exciting thing about this project is that everybody in the creative arts is involved in it, our entire division, all 4 departments. And the fact that we're going to have Judy Shepard on campus is really special.
Judy Shepard, who is Matthew's mother, is going to be there at Western to give some insights into the meaning of Matthew. It's a book that she wrote. Tell us a little bit about what you know about her and what she's going to cover.
Both she and her husband, Dennis, Matthew's father, has been pretty active since this in the last 25 years at promoting good, healthy responses to this kind of violence and talking about the legacy. In fact, that's the name of her speech is The Legacy of Matthew Shepard, about how his murder really inspired a whole generation of activists. Some of those activists are actually in the play. Romaine Patterson is one of those characters in the play who became an activist after the murder and has continued to work in this arena. And so there's a real legacy here that people of a certain age like me, I remember this very clearly when it happened. I remember the murder. I remember the public's response. I remember the media response. I remember all of that. And so they have been working very hard to try to make something good come out of all of that. And Judy, especially Judy, has been speaking on this for the last 20 years pretty regularly. And so there's been a lot of positive things come out of this, even though it's a pretty horrible way to get to that positivity.
Well, thank you very much, Michael Phillips, the director of the Laramie Project, and the actors Miriam Anderson and Maddie Blanchard. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Folks, it's the Laramie Project by Moises Kaufman and the fellow members of the Tectonic Theater Project. That's coming to Rice Auditorium March 2nd through 10th. It's part of a whole focus on Matthew Shepard and what legacy he left behind. There's an oratorio called Considering Matthew Shepard that'll be at the auditorium March 3rd and 11th, conducted by Dr. James Redden. There's also an exhibit honoring the legacy of Matthew Shepard at the Cannon Gallery, and a special event remembering Matthew Shepard, a dance project featuring 2 premiere works, and that'll be at Maple Hall on the 7th of March and that'll be free and open to the public.
It's time to wind up this week's Theater Talk program. Thank you for joining us. Next week at 9 a.m., you can tune in to Talking About Art with Joel Zack. KMUZ Theatre Talk is a proud member of the Salem Theater Network.
KMUZ Theatre Talk airs the first and third Friday of the month at 100.7 and 88.5 FM on your favorite radio app or on demand at kmuz.org. You can also subscribe to our free KMUZ Theatre Talk podcast at anchor.fm or wherever you get your podcasts.
Ed and I will be back March 3rd with a brand new KMUZ Theatre Talk program to fill you in about what's happening in the Mid-Willamette Valley theater world. In the meantime, check out our Theater Talk Facebook page for news and updates about live theater in the Mid-Willamette Valley.
If you haven't yet joined in to support KMUZ Theatre Talk and the rest of KMUZ's great community radio programs, go to kmuz.org right now and click the Contribute button at the top of the page. And thanks. Until next time,
We'll see you in the front row.